Have you ever found yourself wondering about, the very foundations of our deepest spiritual ideas?
Hmm.
Concepts like a divine battle between good and evil, a grand judgment after death, or even like the distinct realms of heaven and hell. Where did these profound notions truly begin?
It's a great question.
Well, you might be surprised to discover that many of these foundational beliefs, which now underpin some of the world's largest religions, trace their lineage back to an ancient faith, one that predates even the major Abrahamic traditions as we know them.
That's right.
So today we're taking a deep dive into Zoroastrianism. That's Zoroastrianism. It's a faith born in ancient Persia that didn't just survive for millennia, but profoundly shaped the spiritual landscape of the world.
Absolutely.
We've had the privilege of exploring, well, a wealth of sources for this deep dive. Everything from ancient historical texts to rigorous theological analyses. And our mission really is to distill the most impactful, maybe surprising insights for you, offering a genuine shortcut to being well-informed on a topic that's far more relevant than you might imagine.
Yeah, what's truly fascinating here is how a religion that, by modern metrics has a relatively small following today could leave such an indelible, almost invisible mark on global thought.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is. Think of it like this. Zoroastrianism wasn't just a religion, it was a kind of spiritual operating system. And its core code influenced countless subsequent applications, if you will.
It's a great analogy.
So our mission in this deep dive is really to extract those key nuggets of knowledge. We want to delve into Zoroastrianism's historical context, its truly revolutionary teachings, and its enduring influence.
Right.
So you can grasp not just what Zoroastrianism taught, but why it mattered so profoundly and how it fundamentally changed the course of religious history, echoing through time in ways you might not expect.
All right, let's peel back the layers of history then and unpack this.
Hmm?
To truly understand the emergence of Zoroastrianism, we first need to sort of transport ourselves back to the ancient Iran plateau, a vast, dynamic region spanning roughly, 1500 to 600 BC. What was this world like? What kind of societies thrived there? And I guess, what spiritual landscape was Zoroaster actually born into?
Okay, yeah, imagine a sprawling territory, much larger than modern Iran. It encompasses present-day Afghanistan and significant swaths of Central Asia.
Wow, okay. Big area.
Huge. And this wasn't a single unified empire, not at this early stage. It was a diverse and often rugged land, home to various nomadic and semi-nomadic Aryan or, well, Indo-Iranian tribes.
Gotcha. Nomadic and semi-nomadic.
Exactly. And these groups weren't static, they were highly mobile. They'd migrated from their original Indo-European homelands in Central Asia, moving southward and westward throughout the second millennium BC.
So a lot of movement shaping the culture.
These extensive millennia-long migrations were absolutely crucial because they laid the groundwork for what scholars call a common Proto-Indo-Iranian culture.
Proto-Indo-Iranian.
This shared cultural and linguistic foundation then began to diverge, giving rise to two distinct but intimately related spiritual traditions. The Vedic religion that flowered in India and the pre-Zoroastrian beliefs that characterized ancient Iran.
So related but distinct paths.
Precisely. It's a powerful illustration of how a shared origin can evolve into vastly different, yet still interconnected spiritual paths.
So it was a world of movement then. Tribal communities adapting to this vast, challenging landscape. What did their daily lives look like? And how was their society structured before Zoroaster's arrival?
Indeed. Life was deeply communal, often dictated by the rhythms of nature. Society was predominantly tribal, with economic activities centered around animal husbandry. Sheep, goats, cattle were their wealth.
Makes sense for nomadic people.
Right. Supplemented by agriculture and more settled river valleys and vital trade routes that crisscrossed the plateau, connecting distinct communities.
Okay, and the social structure.
This tribal structure was clearly stratified. At the top were the priests, later known as the Magi, pronounced M-A-H-G. They served as spiritual intermediaries, custodians of tradition.
The Magi, right. We hear about them later.
Exactly. Beneath them were the warriors, vital for defense and, well, raids too, followed by the farmers and herdsmen who were the backbone of the community, providing sustenance.
Priest, warrior, farmer. Classic structure.
Pretty much. And religion wasn't a separate thing, not like a Sunday activity. It was woven into the very fabric of daily existence. The prevailing beliefs were a form of polytheism.
Meaning many gods.
Many gods, yes. They also held a profound reverence for the powerful forces of nature, sun, sky, wind, rivers, and practiced strong ancestor worship, believing their forebears influenced their present lives.
Okay.
This rich polytheistic context is vital for understanding Zoroastrianism as a reform movement that sought to challenge and redefine these deeply ingrained spiritual norms.
So, a spiritual tapestry woven with countless deities, each demanding their due. Tell us more about these Proto-Indo-Iranian beliefs, especially how they connect to the Vedic traditions from India we often hear about. The parallels seem almost uncanny sometimes.
You're right. The echoes are striking, like two ancient rivers flowing from the same source before charting their own course. Both the early Aryan tribes of Iran and the Vedic peoples of India shared a common religious inheritance.
Yeah.
For instance, both traditions worshipped supernatural beings they referred to as Daiva, pronounced Daiva, that means gods, and Ahura, which roughly translates to supreme beings or lords.
Daiva and Ahura.
Okay,
Yeah.
now here's where we encounter a truly crucial divergence, a theological pivot point that would define Zoroastrianism.
Right.
In the Vedic religion, Daivas like Indra were celebrated and powerful deities. But in Iran, over time, and especially with Zoroaster, the term Daiva underwent a radical reinterpretation.
How so?
It progressively came to signify malevolent or evil spirits.
Well, from gods to demons.
Exactly. This wasn't just a linguistic flip, it was a profound theological redefinition. Branding previous benevolent gods as literal demons, a stark spiritual dichotomy that would echo for millennia across global religions.
That's a significant, almost shocking shift. And what about their ritual practices? Were there common elements that reveal this shared ancestry?
Absolutely. Rituals were the heartbeat of both traditions, designed to maintain cosmic balance and appease the divine. Animal sacrifices were a common practice, elaborate ceremonies performed to honor the gods and secure blessings.
Okay, animal sacrifice was key then.
Very key. And fire rituals were also incredibly important. Fire itself, Atar, pronounced A-H-Tar, was held as sacred. Seen as a powerful conduit to the divine realm, a physical manifestation of truth and cosmic order.
Fire is sacred. That sounds familiar for Zoroastrianism later.
Similarly, water was revered for its purifying and life-giving qualities. Beyond these broader categories, specific deities were also shared and revered. Mitra, for instance, was a significant god in both Vedic and early Iranian religions, revered as the god of covenants, friendship, and light.
Mitra.
And Varuna, Varuna, was another, representing cosmic order and truth, a guardian of universal laws.
So shared gods too.
Yes. So when Zoroaster emerged, he wasn't creating something entirely from scratch. Instead, he fundamentally transformed an existing spiritual system, shifting it dramatically towards a more singular ethical vision and radically reinterpreting those older gods and practices.
Right, which explains why his message was so revolutionary. It challenged everything they knew.
Precisely. It challenged deeply ingrained beliefs, demanding a radical rethinking of the divine, of humanity's place, and of moral responsibility.
This is truly where it gets profoundly interesting. Into this world teeming with many gods, where rituals like animal sacrifice were central, steps a figure who changes everything. Who was Zoroaster, and what do we truly know about his life?
Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, as he is known in the Avesta, their sacred texts. Well, he was indeed a pivotal, almost legendary figure. A religious reformer and prophet whose teachings reshaped a civilization.
A major historical figure then.
Definitely. Scholars estimate his life to have spanned somewhere between, say, 1500 and 1000 BC, though the most widely accepted traditional dating places him around 1200 BC.
Okay, so quite ancient.
Very. But it's important to note from the outset that his exact birth date and even his precise birthplace are subjects of considerable scholarly debate.
Okay. Not nailed down.
Not entirely. Traditional thought generally points to regions in northeast Iran or Central Asia. Places like Bactria or Khorasan are frequently cited as potential locations.
So much of his early life, the details of his upbringing, are shrouded in a bit of mystery then.
To a significant extent, yes. Our primary knowledge of his life comes from traditional Zoroastrian sources, most notably the Gathas, G-H-Thas, which are the oldest hymns within the Avesta, their sacred text.
The Gathas. Got it.
And later Pahlavi, or Middle Persian, writings. These traditional accounts suggest that Zoroaster came from a priestly family.
Ah, so he was part of the religious establishment originally.
That's the tradition, meaning he would have been thoroughly immersed in the existing polytheistic religious practices and rituals of his time from a very young age. However, These same sources also hint at a deep spiritual unease within him.
A dissatisfaction.
Yes, a questioning of the prevailing religious norms and their perceived injustices, particularly the excessive animal sacrifices and the often chaotic nature of their multiple deities.
So he was already thinking differently.
This intellectual curiosity and spiritual yearning clearly foreshadowed his eventual path as a profound religious reformer. He wasn't content with the spiritual status quo. He sought a deeper truth, a more coherent and ethical divine order.
He truly sounds like a seeker, discontent with conventional wisdom. And at some point, this seeking led to a pivotal, transformative moment. Tell us about his revelation and the genesis of his revolutionary mission.
Absolutely. The most crucial event in his life and the bedrock of Zoroastrian faith occurred when he was 30 years old. According to traditional narratives, while he was bathing in a sacred river, he experienced a profound, direct vision. A revelation from Ahura Mazda, Ahura Mazidu, the wise Lord.
A vision, okay.
And this was no mere dream. It was a cosmic encounter that fundamentally shifted his understanding of the universe. The vision proclaimed that the entire cosmos is governed by a single, supreme, benevolent God, Ahura Mazda,
The wise Lord.
the source of all goodness, light, and order. Furthermore, it revealed humanity's fundamental duty to align with and follow this God's path of truth, righteousness, and constructive action.
So this was the moment his revolutionary message was truly born, a radical departure from the polytheism he grew up with.
Precisely. Armed with this revelation, Zoroaster embarked on his mission, beginning to preach his new message, directly challenging and criticizing many of the existing religious practices.
Like the animal sacrifices.
Exactly. He was particularly vocal against the blood sacrifices common in the older polytheistic rituals, viewing them as morally corrupt, and he vehemently condemned the worship of the devas, reclassifying them, as we discussed, as malevolent spirits, not benevolent deities.
Wow. Bold moves.
Extremely. His ambitious aim was nothing less than to establish an entirely new ethical and monotheistic faith system based on the principles revealed to him by Ahura Mazda. However, well, this path was far from easy.
I can imagine.
His radical teachings were initially met with widespread rejection and even hostility. He struggled for acceptance among the tribal communities. It's a common narrative for prophets throughout history, isn't it?
It certainly is. A classic prophet's journey, initial struggle, often persecution, then maybe a powerful breakthrough. So what was the turning point that allowed his message to truly gain traction?
The crucial moment, the inflection point that transformed Zoroastrianism from a struggling fringe movement into a burgeoning faith, came when he gained the patronage of King Vigaspa. That's Veestaspa, also known as Hystaspes.
A king.
The ruler of Bactria, yes, and his influential wife, Hutaosa. Their acceptance of Zoroaster's teachings was monumental.
Royal support changes everything.
Absolutely. It provided the essential legitimacy, protection, and resources necessary for the religion to spread beyond a small group of devoted followers and begin its consolidation across the region. This royal backing was instrumental in establishing Zoroastrianism as a significant, organized faith, enabling it to put down roots and begin its long, influential journey.
And what do we know, or believe we know, about the end of his life?
Well, traditional narratives state that Zoroaster was assassinated at the age of 77 while worshiping in a temple.
Assassinated, wow.
It's a dramatic end, perhaps fitting for a figure who challenged so much. However, it's truly important to emphasize that the historical accuracy of these specific events, particularly the details of his death, is widely debated among scholars today.
Why is that?
Primarily due to the limited nature of the earliest Zoroastrian sources. Much of the more detailed biographical information we have, including accounts of his death, was recorded centuries after his supposed lifetime, often in the form of hagiography.
Writings that treat the subject with reverence, right?
Yeah.
Not strictly history.
Exactly. So there's a degree of legendary embellishment or interpretive layering that might have occurred over time. This raises a critical question for us when we engage with ancient history. How do we reconstruct the lives of foundational figures?
Yeah.
And what are the inherent limitations when our primary sources are often religious texts written long after the events they describe, shaping narratives for spiritual rather than purely historical purposes? It's a challenge common to many iconic figures from antiquity.
So with royal backing, Zoroaster's ideas could truly take root and spread. And these ideas were, as you said, revolutionary. Zoroastrianism is often called one of the first monotheistic religions, yet it also has this powerful, striking sense of duality. Let's dig into that complex interplay.
Absolutely. At its very core, Zoroastrian theology posits Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, as the singular supreme being and the ultimate creator of the universe.
The one God.
The one God. He is the pure, benevolent source of all goodness, wisdom, justice, and cosmic order. This unequivocal declaration of Ahura Mazda as the only god to be worshipped, along with the radical rejection of the earlier polytheism, categorizing all other deities, the devas, as inherently evil spirits or manifestations of falsehood, is precisely what makes Zoroastrianism fundamentally monotheistic in its worship.
Okay, that makes sense. But then the duality comes in. How?
Well, this very act of reclassification directly introduces its distinctive dualistic worldview, which is arguably its most impactful and influential theological contribution.
So it's not simply a belief in one good God, but rather a cosmic struggle on a grand scale.
Precisely. And this is the absolute heart of Zoroastrian cosmic dualism, a profound, ongoing, inherent struggle between the forces of good, represented by Ahura Mazda, and the forces of evil, embodied by Angra Mainyu Ihn Manu, also known as Ahriman.
Angra Mainyu, the opposing force.
The absolute antithesis. This isn't a struggle that developed over time. It has existed since the very beginning of the universe, shaping its fundamental nature. Angra Mainyu represents chaos, falsehood, which they call Druge destruction, and malice.
Wow, since the beginning.
Since the beginning. And what makes this dualism so unique, so compelling, and ultimately so influential is humanity's integral and active role within it.
Our role. How so?
Humans are not merely passive observers in this grand cosmic battle. Rather, we are conscious, active participants. We are endowed with the sacred gift of free will.
Free will, that's huge.
It is, and with it comes the profound responsibility to choose a side, either to follow the path of Ahura Mazda, which is the path of Asha pronounced aha, meaning truth, order, and righteousness, or to succumb to the lure of falsehood and chaos druge.
That's a fascinating, almost breathtaking concept, a cosmic struggle where human participation is not just significant, but essential. It sounds incredibly ethical and demands immediate personal accountability.
It is indeed profoundly ethical. This dualism isn't just a grand theological concept. It has immediate, tangible implications for every aspect of daily life. It emphasizes that humans, through their inherent free will, possess the power and the moral responsibility to contribute meaningfully to the ultimate victory of good over evil in the world.
So every choice matters.
Every thought, every word, every deed, however small, carries cosmic significance. Tipping the scales towards order or disorder, this directly leads to one of Zoroastrianism's most striking and enduring principles. And it prompts an important question for you, the listener, to reflect on. What does it truly mean for you to consciously choose good in your daily life? Not just for personal gain, but as an active contribution to a larger ongoing struggle for cosmic order and harmony.
That's powerful. You mentioned Ashea. Can you elaborate on what exactly that means and why it is so central to this ethical framework?
Sure, Asha is arguably one of the most fundamental and profound concepts in Zoroastrianism. It's like a guiding star for all action. It's much more than just truth in the casual sense.
Okay.
Asha encompasses truth, justice, cosmic order, divine law, and righteousness. It's the inherent principle by which the universe operates in perfect balance and harmony, the very pattern of creation established by Ahura Mazda.
So it's like the underlying order of reality.
Exactly. The idea is that the entire cosmos functions according to Asha, the orderly procession of seasons, the movement of stars, the growth of life, and therefore, humans are called to live their lives in alignment with this universal divine principle. It's about living a life that promotes order, truth, and right action in the world, mirroring the divine blueprint.
And the opposite.
Its direct opposite, the destructive principle, is druj, D-R-U-J, which signifies falsehood, disorder, chaos, and deceit. Zoroaster consistently urged his followers to pursue Asha in all aspects of their lives and to actively avoid druj, making it the ultimate ethical imperative.
This concept of free will, of profound personal responsibility, sounds remarkably ahead of its time, almost modern in its emphasis on individual agency. How did Zoroastrianism articulate and emphasize free will?
It's truly remarkably forward-thinking for an ancient religion. Zoroastrianism places an incredibly strong, almost unparalleled emphasis on human free will. It is emphatically not a deterministic faith where one's fate is predestined.
So no fate, just choices.
Essentially, yes. It teaches that individuals are endowed with the unique agency to make their own choices, and crucially, they bear the profound responsibility to use that free will for the betterment of the world, consciously aligning themselves with the forces of good.
How did they break that down?
This profound moral responsibility is beautifully encapsulated in three foundational ethical principles, often referred to as the Good Trinity or the Zoroastrian Creed. First, humata, good thoughts. This wasn't just about avoiding negative thoughts, but actively cultivating benevolent intentions. Consciously directing one's mind toward truth, constructive ideas, cosmic order, believing that even silent contemplation had a ripple effect. It's about cultivating wisdom and moral clarity.
Good thoughts. Makes sense.
Second, hukta, good words. This emphasizes speaking truth, kindness, and constructive communication. It's about honesty in speech, avoiding slander, using words to build rather than destroy.
Good words. Got it.
And third, harata, HVARSTA, good deeds. This calls for acting justly, benevolently, and in ways that actively contribute to the cosmic order and the welfare of creation. It's about practical action, charity, caring for the environment.
Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Simple but profound.
Exactly. And the belief is that by consistently following these principles, consciously thinking good, speaking good, and doing good, individuals will not only find profound spiritual fulfillment, but will also directly contribute to the victory of Ahura Mazda, and will receive rewards both in this world and in the afterlife.
Ah, the afterlife.
Yes, it's a very clear, actionable, and profoundly ethical application of their core beliefs.
Speaking of the afterlife, Zoroastrianism has some incredibly detailed ideas about what happens after death. And, as you mentioned, these ideas sound remarkably familiar to those found in other major world religions.
This is truly where its profound and often overlooked influence becomes most evident. Zoroastrianism introduced sophisticated eschatological beliefs, ideas about the end times, the fate of the soul, what happens after death. They were quite revolutionary for their era and spread far beyond ancient Iran.
Okay, what did they believe?
They firmly believed in a personal judgment day that awaits every soul immediately after physical death. At the core of this is the concept of the Chinvat Bridge Injata, often translated as the Bridge of the Requiter or the Bridge of Separation.
The Chinvat Bridge.
It's vividly depicted as a narrow bridge that souls must cross. The righteous, those who have lived lives aligned with the Asha through good thoughts, words, and deeds, find the bridge wide and easy to traverse. Leading them to heaven, known as Garadman, G.A. Rodman, literally the house of song, a place of joy and light.
Heaven, okay. And for the others?
Conversely, for the wicked, those who succumb to Druj and lived lives of falsehood, the bridge becomes razor thin, causing them to fall into hell or Duzak. Quite literally, the house of worst existence, a realm of darkness and torment.
Wow. A very clear heaven and hell based on your life's choices.
Very clear. Individual judgment. But is there a final resolution to this grand cosmic battle between good and evil?
Right. Does good win in the end?
Yes, absolutely. And this is another incredibly influential concept. Zoroastrian eschatology also foresees a grand universal renovation of the universe, a process called freshokereti, meaning making wonderful.
Making wonderful. I like that.
This will be led by a savior figure, the Saushant, S-O-W Shant, believed to be a descendant of Zoroaster himself, destined to restore the world to its pristine state.
A savior figure.
The ultimate goal of this renovation is the complete and final elimination of evil from existence, leading to a perfect, renewed world where good triumphs definitively and eternally. Now, this very concept of a Messiah figure, coupled with the distinct ideas of heaven and hell, individual judgment, and a final universal renewal, has profoundly influenced later Abrahamic religions such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
That connection is what's utterly fascinating here. How deeply these ancient ideas resonated, were adopted, and found new life in religious traditions that emerged centuries, even millennia later.
It really highlights a fascinating cross-pollination of spiritual thought across the ancient world.
Finally, for many, a striking visual associated with Zoroastrianism is the sacred fire. How do fire and water, these fundamental elements, fit into these core beliefs?
Fire, known as Atar, R-H-Tar, and water are both considered exceptionally sacred elements in Zoroastrianism. They are seen as pure, life-giving, fundamental to the cosmic order and creation of Ahura Mazda.
Pure elements.
Exactly. Fire, in particular, holds immense symbolic significance. It represents the divine light and wisdom of Ahura Mazda, a visible manifestation of truth, purity, and creative energy. This is precisely why you find constantly burning fires meticulously maintained by priests in Zoroastrian temples.
The eternal flames.
They serve as a focal point for prayer and reverence, symbolizing the perpetual presence of the divine and the active force of Asha in the world.
So to be clear, it's not fire worship itself, but rather a symbolic reverence, an homage to divine purity.
Exactly, and this is a crucial distinction that's often misunderstood by outsiders. Zoroastrians do not worship fire itself. Instead, fire is revered as a potent symbol of Ahura Mazda's divine presence, his purity, and his creative energy.
A symbol, not the god.
Right, it's a focal point for devotion, a medium for prayer, a visible representation of truth and righteousness, not an object of worship in its own right. Similarly, water is revered for its purifying qualities, essential for cleansing both the physical body and the spiritual self.
So both are key for rituals.
Both fire and water are extensively used in purification and cleansing rituals, underscoring their symbolic connection to purity and spiritual renewal. It's an important nuance to grasp, to truly understand the depth of their practices.
And where do we find these incredibly ancient and foundational teachings preserved for us today? Where can we read them?
The foundational teachings of Zoroastrianism are primarily preserved in the Avesta, VES2, their sacred collection of texts. Within the Avesta, the oldest and most revered part is known as the Gathas.
The Gatha, all right, you mentioned those.
Yes. These are 17 poetic hymns, which are directly attributed to Zoroaster himself. The Gathas are unique because they are believed to contain Zoroaster's own prayers to Ahura Mazda, his most profound moral teachings, his insights into the cosmic order, and his explanations of human responsibilities in the cosmic struggle between Aja and Druj.
So direct from the source, essentially.
As close as we can get. Linguistically, they are incredibly ancient, dated by scholars to the 2nd millennium BC and written in an archaic language called Old Avestan, making them some of the earliest insights we have into this profound faith. They provide a direct, powerful window into the prophet's original message and vision, unfiltered by later interpretations.
So with these powerful core beliefs established a singular, wise God, a cosmic battle of good and evil, profound free will, and a clear vision of the afterlife, how do these translate into daily life and communal worship? What were the key rituals and practices that shaped the lived experience of Zoroastrianism?
Well, these core beliefs profoundly shaped every aspect of daily life and communal worship, creating a distinct and enduring religious culture. Central to Zoroastrian practice are the fire temples, known as Atashkade, Tashkade.
The fire temple.
These aren't just buildings, they are consecrated sacred spaces housing perpetually burning fires. These fires are meticulously maintained, often for centuries, by the priestly class, the Magi. They are the physical embodiment of the divine presence of Ahura Mazda, the visible representation of his light, wisdom, and the cosmic order of Asha.
A constant reminder.
A powerful focal point, yes, drawing the worshipper's gaze and spirit towards the divine. And there are actually different degrees of sacred fire within these temples, reflecting varying levels of consecration and importance.
Different levels of fire.
Yes. For instance, the Atash Baram, Ram, is the highest grade of sacred fire, incredibly rare and revered. Its preparation involves a complex and lengthy process, gathering embers from 16 different sources, including lightning strikes, communal fires, fires from various trades, and subjecting them to elaborate purification rituals for over a year.
Wow, that's intense dedication.
It's a profound commitment to maintaining that sacred living flame, reflecting the meticulous purity they uphold.
And beyond the fire itself, what would a major worship ritual entail for a Zoroastrian? What did they do?
The most important and elaborate form of worship is the yasna ritual. This isn't just a simple prayer service, it's a profound liturgical ceremony, often lasting several hours, performed by priests on behalf of the community.
Okay.
During the yasna, priests meticulously recite long sections of the Avesta, particularly the Gatha Zoroaster's own sacred hymns, along with other prayers, invocations, and litanies. A crucial element of this ritual is the offering and consumption of haoma.
Haoma. What's that?
Haoma is a sacred plant drink, an element that was actually inherited from the earlier Proto-Indo-Iranian religion, much like soma in the Vedic tradition.
Ah, the Soma connection again.
Exactly. It's prepared fresh from a specific plant, pounded and mixed with water, and believed to provide both physical and spiritual purification and enlightenment. Its ritual consumption was seen as a microcosmic act of creation, mirroring Ahura Mazda's own benevolent order, offering a direct participatory experience in the divine process.
So it enhanced the connection to the divine.
That was the belief, yes, inducing a state of heightened spiritual awareness.
Purification seems to be a remarkably strong and consistent theme across all these practices. How else did this profound emphasis on cleanliness manifest in their daily lives and unique rituals?
You're absolutely right. Purification and cleanliness are paramount in Zoroastrianism, both physically and spiritually. They believe that maintaining purity helps one align with Ahura Mazda and his cosmic order, reflecting the ideal state of creation.
Purity equals alignment.
Pretty much. This is precisely why water and fire, as the purest sacred elements, are central to many purification rituals, from daily ablutions to more elaborate ceremonies for spiritual cleansing. But perhaps the most striking and distinctive example of their emphasis on cleanliness, and what often captures significant attention,
Yes.
is their unique handling of the deceased.
Oh.
Unlike many cultures that bury or cremate their dead, Zoroastrians consider deceased bodies to be impure,
Impure, why?
believing they contaminate the sacred elements of earth, fire, and water, which must remain unsullied. Therefore, they traditionally did not inter bodies in the ground or commit them to flames.
So if not burial or cremation, what was the practice then for the deceased? It must have been quite different.
It was indeed profoundly different and uniquely Zoroastrian. They developed a distinct method. They would traditionally place the deceased in structures known as dekmas or dakmas, or towers of silence.
Towers of silence, I've heard of those.
These are circular, open-air, elevated structures, typically built on hills or mountains. The bodies would be exposed to the elements and rapidly consumed by carrion birds, primarily vultures.
Exposed to vultures. Wow.
This method was seen as the most respectful and ecologically conscious way to dispose of the body without polluting the sacred earth, fire, or water. It wasn't seen as disrespect for the body, but rather a necessity for cosmic purity. It allowed the physical form to naturally decompose and be recycled without corrupting these pure elements, while the soul was believed to depart for its spiritual journey.
That certainly underscores their profound respect for the purity of creation. A unique practice indeed. Beyond these rituals, what about their calendar and festivals? How did these shape the rhythm of Zoroastrian life?
Their calendar is deeply intertwined with natural and seasonal cycles, reflecting the cosmic order of Ahura Mazda. The most important and widely celebrated festival is Nowruz, N-O-H-Ruz.
Nowruz, the Persian New Year, right?
Exactly. It marks the new year and the spring equinox. This isn't just a religious holiday. It's a profound celebration of renewal and rebirth, symbolizing the triumph of light over darkness and the return of life.
A celebration of a show winning, maybe.
In a way, yes. And what's particularly significant about Nowruz is that it's still widely celebrated today across Iran, Central Asia, and by diaspora communities worldwide, transcending religious boundaries. Millions of people, regardless of their current faith, observe Nowruz.
Highlighting Zoroastrianism's profound and lasting cultural impact far beyond its religious adherence.
Absolutely. Beyond Nowruz, other significant festivals are also celebrated throughout the year. Many involve rituals and celebrations related to fire and water, reinforcing the sacredness of these elements in their daily and annual practices, connecting their spiritual life to the natural world.
A faith with such strong moral principles, a guiding prophet, and a clear cosmic vision couldn't help but profoundly shape the society around it. How does Zoroastrianism impact ancient Iranian society and politics, particularly as it gained royal favor?
Well, the acceptance of Zoroastrianism by King Vyataspa was incredibly pivotal, as we said, transforming it from a nascent reform movement into what would become an official state religion.
Which accelerated its spread.
Dramatically. Throughout the Iranian plateau and beyond, providing it with immense authority and resources. Beyond mere expansion, Zoroastrianism also served as a powerful unifying force among the diverse and often conflicting Iranian tribes.
How did it unify them?
By offering a coherent moral and cosmic order, a shared understanding of good and evil, and a universal divine law, a shesha, it helped to reduce intertribal conflicts and fostered a greater sense of shared identity and societal cohesion. It provided a common framework for justice, ethics, and community life, laying the groundwork for future empires.
And what about the priests, the magi? How did they fit into this new political and social landscape, especially with the religion gaining state backing?
The magi, as the hereditary priestly class, rapidly gained significant religious and, crucially, political authority. Their influence expanded considerably during the Achaemenid Empire Achaemenid, which spanned from roughly 550 to 330 BC, became the largest empire the world had yet seen.
Right, the first Persian Empire.
Exactly. During this golden age, the Magi were not just ritual specialists maintaining the sacred fires, they served as crucial advisors in the royal court, their spiritual authority translating into real political leverage.
So they had real power.
significant power. Their role was often akin to kingmakers, interpreting omens, advising on military campaigns, overseeing legal proceedings, sometimes even challenging rulers based on perceived divine will or infringements of Asha.
Wow.
They were also renowned for their scholarly pursuits, particularly practices like astrology and divination, which would have been highly valued in courtly circles. Their role was multifaceted, blending spiritual guidance with practical governance, wielding a unique blend of religious and temporal power.
It sounds like a deeply integrated system. How did these moral principles translate into daily societal norms, particularly regarding something as fundamental as the role and status of women, which was often quite restrictive in the ancient world?
Well, the ethical principles of Zoroastrianism, especially the central concept of Asha, truth, order, righteousness, played a vital role in strengthening the overall social order, promoting a society founded on principles of justice, honesty, benevolent actions, discouraging theft, deceit, violence.
And women specifically.
What's genuinely fascinating here is that the status of women in early Zoroastrian society was comparatively higher and more equitable than in many other contemporary cultures of the ancient world.
Really? How so?
Women were not considered property. They had rights to property, to participate in religious ceremonies, and even to hold positions of influence. We see evidence of this in figures like Queen Hutasa, King Vishwaspa's wife.
Right, she helped accept the faith.
Exactly. She played an important and active role and was herself a patron of the faith. This isn't just a minor detail. It indicates a greater degree of agency, influence, and respect for women within the early Zoroastrian framework compared to the often rigidly patriarchal norms of neighboring societies. It showcases how a foundational ethic of balance and responsibility could manifest in social structures.
That's a really important point. Now, this ancient faith clearly didn't exist in a vacuum. It had profound interactions with other cultures and religions that still resonate today, shaping the global spiritual landscape. Let's truly connect this to the bigger picture.
This is truly one of the most compelling and often underestimated aspects of Zoroastrianism's legacy. As we discussed, it shared common Proto-Indo-Iranian roots with the Vedic religion.
Right, the Daivas becoming demons.
Exactly. While Zoroaster's classification of Daivas as evil spirits marked a significant theological divergence, transforming erstwhile gods into demons, there were still deep parallels, like the sacred ritual drink, Homa in Zoroastrianism and Soma in Vedic traditions.
Showing that shared origin.
Precisely. This shared linguistic, mythological, and ritualistic ancestry underscores their common origins before their paths diverged so dramatically, creating two distinct yet recognizable spiritual traditions from a shared cultural foundation.
But the influence goes far beyond just its Indo-Iranian cousins, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's often hinted that it profoundly influenced the Abrahamic faiths we know today.
Absolutely, and this is where the historical insights become truly profound. The interactions during the Achaemenid Empire period were particularly significant, especially with Judaism.
During the Babylonian exile.
Exactly. During the Babylonian exile, which occurred in the 6th century BC, many Jewish people lived under Achaemenid Persian rule. It's during this crucial period, lasting for decades, that scholars believe a profound cross-pollination of ideas occurred.
What kind of ideas?
Concepts such as a more developed system of distinct angels and demons, the idea of a coming Messiah figure who would usher in a new era, the notion of a final last judgment where every soul faces divine reckoning, and elaborate eschatological ideas like specific heavens, Garadman, and hells, Duzak.
Concepts that are central to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam now.
Exactly. These elements, which later became fundamental tenets of those faiths, might have been significantly influenced by Zoroastrian dualism and its detailed afterlife beliefs. This wasn't necessarily a direct adoption, more like a rich cultural and theological exchange during a period of close interaction.
Wow.
This raises an important question for all of us. How much of what we consider universal religious concepts actually have deeply specific ancient origins and were transmitted through historical encounters rather than arising independently?
So elements we now consider absolutely central to major world religions could have their genesis, or at least a significant shaping, from Zoroastrianism. That's truly a thought-provoking idea, hinting at a much more intertwined history of religions than we often consider.
It's a powerful argument, suggesting a complex, interconnected web of influence rather than isolated, distinct religious developments. And beyond the Abrahamic faiths, there's also evidence of interaction with the Hellenistic world, particularly after Alexander the Great's conquests in the 4th century BC.
With the Greeks.
Yes. As the Achaemenid Empire came into extensive contact with the Greek world, some Zoroastrian elements, particularly its robust moral dualism, the stark inherent contrast between good and evil, light and darkness, may have subtly seeped into Hellenistic philosophy.
How so?
We can potentially find echoes of these ideas in the dualistic concepts of Platonic philosophy, for example, which emphasizes a world of ideal forms versus imperfect material reality, or in later Gnostic traditions that also speak of cosmic battles between light and darkness.
So influencing philosophy, too.
It suggests a broader intellectual and spiritual exchange that extended beyond purely religious boundaries, making Zoroastrianism a silent but significant contributor to philosophical thought. It's a testament to the enduring power of Zoroastrian thought to penetrate and influence diverse intellectual traditions.
From a tribal reform movement to a state religion impacting global thought, what became a Zoroastrianism after its imperial peak, and where does it stand today in the modern world?
Well, Zoroastrianism indeed rose to great prominence, becoming the official religion of successive, powerful Iranian empires, the Achaemenid, Parthian, and Sasanian and Sasanian empires.
Dominant for over 1,000 years.
It reigned as a dominant spiritual, cultural, political force in ancient Iran for over a millennium, shaping laws, art, national identity. However, its prominence began to decline significantly after the Islamic conquest of Iran in the 7th century AD.
The Islamic conquest, that was the turning point.
A major turning point. As Islam became the new state religion, Zoroastrian communities gradually diminished under various pressures, including forced conversions, economic incentives for conversion, persecution, leading to a long period of decline and diaspora.
So it didn't disappear entirely, but it became much, much smaller, existing as a minority faith.
Precisely. Today, Zoroastrian communities exist as relatively small but remarkably active and resilient minorities across the globe. The largest and most prominent community is the Parsis, primarily found in India, particularly around Mumbai.
The Parsis in India, right?
Wow. Where their ancestors historically sought refuge from persecution in Iran centuries ago. There are also smaller, enduring communities in Iran itself, particularly in cities like Yazd and Kerman, preserving ancient traditions.
Still there in Iran, too.
And, of course, vibrant diaspora communities have emerged around the world, North America, Europe, Australia, ensuring the continuation of the faith. Despite their numerically small presence, their influence remains outsized in historical and theological terms.
Because of that legacy.
Exactly. Its enduring legacy, with its distinctive moral dualism, its profound emphasis on free will and personal responsibility, its clear monotheistic structure in worshiping Ahura Mazda, and its groundbreaking eschatological concepts has left an indelible mark on modern religions, as we've explored.
And culturally, too, like Nowruz.
Absolutely. Cultural traditions like Nowruz, the Persian New Year, continue to thrive and are celebrated by millions worldwide, transcending religious boundaries and demonstrating Zoroastrianism's persistent cultural impact far beyond its religious adherence alone.
Even with all this rich information, there are still some truly fascinating questions that scholars continue to debate and grapple with about Zoroastrianism, aren't there? The story is far from completely written.
Absolutely. Despite the wealth of sources and the dedication of scholars, there are lingering unknowns and vigorous debates that keep the field of Zoroastrian studies incredibly dynamic. One significant area of debate revolves around the historical reality of Zoroaster himself.
Whether he was a real person.
Well, while the language and stylistic elements of the Gathas, which are directly attributed to him, strongly suggest his existence as a real, singular individual who composed these hymns. Detailed biographical information about his life from truly contemporary sources is quite limited.
Right, the later sources.
Most of what we know comes from later traditional accounts, as we discussed, which blend historical elements with hagiography. This leads to ongoing scholarly discussion about how much of his story is historical fact versus symbolic narrative development over centuries.
So they're not necessarily questioning if he existed, but how accurately we can reconstruct his specific biography and experiences.
Exactly. The linguistic evidence from the Gathas themselves strongly points to a historical figure who pioneered these ideas. However, the lack of expensive, independently corroborated biographical details means scholars are constantly refining their understanding of his precise life and times.
Okay, what else is debated?
Another key debate centers on how to precisely categorize Zoroastrianism itself. Is it purely monotheistic, or is it fundamentally dualistic?
That tension again.
Right. While it posits Ahura Mazda as the single supreme god to be worshipped, the distinct and independent existence of Angra, the spirit of evil, leads some scholars to classify it more accurately as a dualistic religion, one where two opposing forces operate from the beginning of time. This nuances our understanding of early religious definitions and how we apply modern categories to ancient faiths that often defy simple classifications.
And the dating, which we touched on earlier, seems to remain a persistent challenge in pinning down its precise origins.
Yes, the precise timing of Zoroastrianism's emergence remains one of the most challenging uncertainties in the field. Traditional dating, primarily based on religious texts, places Zoroaster around 1200 BC, making him roughly contemporary with figures like Moses or the later Vedic rishis.
But others think later.
Yes, some modern scholars, based on archaeological, linguistic, and comparative religious evidence, propose a later period, suggesting his life and the emergence of the faith occurred somewhere between 1000 and 600 BC. This uncertainty underscores the inherent challenges of reconstructing ancient history, especially when relying on sources that were oral for centuries before being meticulously written down.
So lots still to explore.
These ongoing debates don't diminish the religion's immense historical and spiritual importance, but rather highlight the dynamic and evolving nature of historical and religious scholarship.
What an extraordinary deep dive into an incredibly influential yet often overlooked ancient faith. We've unpacked its origins in the vibrant world of ancient Iran, delved into the truly revolutionary teachings of Ahura Mazda, the cosmic battle between Aja and Druj, and the profound, almost radical role of human choice. We've seen how rituals centered around the sacred fire and purifying water underpin daily practice, and most importantly, explored its far-reaching, undeniable influence on some of the world's largest and most enduring religions.
Indeed. From its foundational concepts of truth, Asha and free will, to its distinct vision of a final judgment and a cosmic renewal, Zoroastrianism didn't just transform the religious landscape of ancient Iran. It laid theological frameworks and introduced ideas that shaped much of the world that followed. It reminds us that ideas, even those born millennia ago in distant lands, continue to echo and resonate in surprising, often unacknowledged ways within our contemporary spiritual and philosophical landscape.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Perhaps it's a powerful reminder that many of the profound spiritual questions humanity grapples with, the nature of good and evil, the meaning of our choices, what awaits us after death, and some of the very answers we've collectively developed, have deep and intertwined roots that stretch across cultures and millennia.
That's a great way to put it.
The next time you encounter a concept of a divine cosmic struggle, or ponder the idea of an afterlife with clear realms of reward and consequence, you might just be feeling the ancient, powerful, and often unseen echoes of Zoroaster's revolutionary vision.
And that leads us to a final provocative thought. If a single ancient prophet, against all odds, could so profoundly shift human understanding of the divine and our moral responsibility, leading to ideas that ripple across civilizations, what other unseen ancient influences might still be subtly shaping your worldview today without you even realizing it?
Something for you to mull over. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep being well informed.